Alright, I got to do the front struts in a 2007 Accord. So come along, I'll show you how I do it. Let's get to work. Alright, as you can see, we got a 7th generation Accord here. And I already have the vehicle lifted up in the air. That's the first thing we need to do, is lift the vehicle up and get it on jack stands. And of course, I'm doing a bunch of work on this vehicle, so you can see I already have it done. If you want to see exactly how to do it, how to safely lift this thing up, put it on jack stands, I have a transmission service video on this, and not on this vehicle, but on this generation, and also an oil change video, so you can check it out and see how to safely do that. Alright, looking up under here, you can see there's our strut assembly right there. That's what we're going to be pulling out. While I'm thinking of it, we have an upper control arm here, so that means this is a double wishbone setup. Other Hondas have a McPherson type setup. This is going to be a double wishbone, but let's go ahead and get started. Alright, before we get started, they all had a little dot of paint on them, but I just took my little Milwaukee Inksol here. It's silver, and I just coated the top right there, so we'll know which one of these studs goes to the front of the car. Alright, I'm going to take this bolt out right here, just using a 12mm socket. You can see I'm using deep to get over the top of this brake line. We'll just pull this out. We could probably leave it in place, but this way that gives us some more play when we pull our strut out. And this thing, I just cleaned it up and took it out and put it in when I did the brakes, so I knew it would come out easy. Alright, we got to get our fork out right here, and right up here by my pinky finger you can see there's a bolt. We got to pop that out. Alright, we'll see if we can pop it out with the old Milwaukee here. It struggled a little bit, but it got it. You can see that's what it looks like, and it's fluted to help prevent it from getting jammed in there and stuck in there. That's where an impact can help break the rust bond free, because you can see there's some rust in there, and these things, they like to stick in there. But thankfully with that fluted design, they usually don't get seized in there too bad anymore. Alright, now on the bottom of the fork you can see there's a nut right there. We're going to have to spin that nut off. And then looking on the other side, there's the head of the bolt, and we're going to have to pull it out. Now this bolt is also fluted just like the top one, so hopefully it's not seized in there, but they can get seized inside there. Alright, we're going to need a 17mm socket on both sides, or a socket and a wrench. Usually what I'll do is I'll put the wrench on that side and hold it. So we can just set the wrench on there like that. That probably will fall off, but I can't do it and hold the camera. And then I'll hit the other side with the impact. I'll use the bigger 3/8 inch. See if she can pop it off, otherwise I'll have to get the 1/2 inch. Spinning it this way with the impact, I shouldn't have to hold the wrench, but we'll see if it moves. Nah, the whole thing's spinning. I'm going to have to hold it. Alright, looking in there, you can see that the bolt is turning, so that's a good sign. It doesn't look like we're seized in there. So I'll just hold this side and then spin the other side off. And you can see, spun it right out. Alright, now we'll just give this thing a little tap with the hammer. And that's a good sign it's moving. Now I'll just use a punch to punch it all the way through. There she goes. This one looks in excellent shape compared to, this is the driver's side. If you can see that one. This one has had a lot of corrosion. This one was more difficult to pop out. It still came out, but a little more difficult than this one. Alright, now looking through here at our fork, now we're just going to hit it right here and try to knock it down. Sometimes these are really jammed in there and you really got to go to town on them. Hopefully this one isn't in there too bad, but they can get corroded on there. We can also hit the other side over here to help it along. You can see it's free. Now we just gotta wiggle it. There we go. We just wiggle it up out of the way. Now if you can you see the rust in there? You can see this one isn't terrible, but there's some rust in there, and that's what grabs onto it. So sometimes, you know, hitting it and twisting it will break that bond free so you can knock it out. But we'll end up cleaning that just a little bit and probably put some fluid film so the next one won't stick on there, even though this will probably be the last set of struts this car ever sees. Alright, now that we got everything loosened up below, now we got to get the nuts on top. Now this is the center one that keeps the spring and everything together. We don't want to touch that. That can be dangerous, so we're going to leave that one alone. But we do need to pop off the 5 on the outside. Now this model has a strut brace, so we're going to have these two right here. We'll need a 12mm socket for those. Some models may not have this. And then we're going to have to take these 3 off, which we'll need a 14mm socket for that. Alright, first thing we'll do is pop the 2 12s off. And now we can take the other 3 off. I want to leave that one loose, just like that, up near the top. And as you can see, can you see that? I'm using an extension. I don't want to damage our AC lines. The other side we don't have to worry about it, but this side we have AC lines right next to us. We don't want to damage them, especially hitting them with an impact. So this one I can take all the way off. And this one I can take all the way off. You see how that nut held it from dropping? Otherwise this thing would have dropped and could have hit our foot. And while I'm thinking of it, this one we really didn't have to paint because it has these other studs here that line everything up. Some models don't have that, so it's just a habit I've gotten into, so you can't put it in backwards or wrong. Alright, so you can see our strut's loose in there, but it's still hanging on by that nut up top. Another reason why we keep the nut there is we don't want it to fall and damage this brake line right here. There's a possibility it could, but in most cases this spring right here, it's going to get caught between this right here and this right here, so we won't be able to just pull it out like we can on many models. What we're going to have to do is we're going to put, well, you can see I have the jack right here. We're going to put the jack right up under the control arm. We're going to lift it up enough so we create a little bit of clearance. Okay, so you can see before I jack it up, I want to make sure this is angled over a little bit, so that way it's not, we don't want it to get caught on this and bind up. And let me show you where. You can see where I have the jack. I'm not putting it on the nut right here for the ball joint. We're just putting it under the lower control arm. We're just going to lift it up a little bit. Okay, lifting it up that much should give us just enough clearance between these two where as soon as we take the nut off, we can just slide it right out, right underneath our brake hose, and we'll just take it out just like this. Alright, now that we have everything in place, I'm just going to reach up under there and grab the strut and then take the nut off, and I should be able to just maneuver it out. There we go. It's a tight fit. You kind of got to wiggle it past everything, but you can get it out by using a little trick like that. And I'll just lower this down right now. Alright, here's our new parts. This is for the right, here's for the left. We're going to go with KYB, and we're going to go with complete strut assembly, so we're not going to be taking the strut apart. KYB calls them strut plus assemblies, and you can see that the right is going to end in 5. And our part number for the left side is going to end in 6. And looking at the box, you can see this is what we get. And also comes with new mounting hardware on the top. So all 5 nuts that we need comes with it. And as you can see, it comes with a little tag here warning you that the vehicle height might be slightly different. You got to let these things settle in. And then we got stickers on here and warnings. You can see we got our orange warning sticker not to take that center nut off or bad things will happen. And of course, before we install it, we want to make sure that our parts are the same. So double check it, make sure everything's the same. And also in the case of complete strut assemblies, we need to make sure that this thing is assembled in the right position. Otherwise, you know, where the notch lines up right here may not be where the top plate lines up. If you've watched my strut videos before, you've seen that I had to fix these sometimes, so it's something to be aware of. And on these, this is the right side, or the passenger side here in the US. You can see where our notch is. It's directly in line with the end of the spring right there. And then it comes up, and then it's right in line with this post. And this post goes to the inside. And if you can see where our silver painted one is, it's right there. So that would be in the front, and this one goes to the inside. So we can see that this one is lined up perfectly. I'll show you what the driver's side also looks like. And you can see, here's the driver's side, and it's a mirror image as far as lining up. We got our notches right there, and it comes up to the end of the spring, which goes up to our post right here. And this is also the inside one. And then there you can see this is where I painted the one towards the front silver. So that gives us our orientation. Alright, I cleaned up the fork so it's a lot better. And then now we just need to get the strut assembly in. But I want to point out before I put this up in the car so you can see it, we got this little notch right here. That's where the fork is going to go over this, just like that. That's where it's going to be tightened down, right there. So we need to make sure it's in position. And that's why everything has to be lined up, or this little notch won't line up down below. Now this is to the inside of the car, so it's hard to see without a mirror. That's why I wanted to point it out here. Alright, now we'll just take our fork and just drop it into place, and we'll keep it up back out of the way. Alright, to get our new strut assembly in, we're going to bring it this way, and we're going to stick the springs way over here and kind of maneuver it up into place and go around this to try to avoid using the jack if we can. Sometimes you got to get the jack to adjust this clearance, but sometimes we can just get it in there and then pop it into place. And then we're just gonna, you know, line up our holes and put it up into place. And you can see I already put the new nuts right here, so that way they're handy, so I can just secure it so it won't fall back down. And as you can see, it's a little bit of a balancing act trying to get it through exactly the right way. But usually getting it in, you don't have to jack up the suspension or anything. But I always find that it's easier to jack up the suspension to get it out. You can pop it out real easy. And, you know, that's why you stage these nuts right here. You can just reach around and secure it. And now, if I can do it, just maneuver our, just maneuver our fork into place like that. We can lift it up and then put the bolt through on the bottom. Alright, now we got to get the bolts into the fork there. You can see this is the pinch bolt, and I cleaned it up so it's ready to go. And then here's the lower bolt right here. And like I said, this one was clean and in good shape, like it's been replaced at some point. Now, this nut is a lock nut, so you can see it when I bring it in, it kind of stops right there and it starts to lock on, just the design of it. So you always have to replace this, and then Honda recommends you replace the bolts. Now, I am going to replace it, but not in this video, because I have some more work to do, and I got to get this car fixed and out of my way so that I can do some more work on another car. But I don't know if you can see, but this compliance bushing, this bushing in the lower control arm, is completely torn. So I'm going to do the compliance bushings on both sides. And to do it, I got to take that bolt out again to get this lower arm off. And so I'm not going to waste a brand new bolt and nut when all I need to do is get it out of my garage, park it, get another vehicle in to work on it, and then as soon as I get the parts, I'm going to fix that. So for the purpose of cleaning this video up, I'm going to reuse the bolts, but you got to replace, at the very least, you got to replace this nut, and I recommend replacing the whole thing. Alright, as you can see, I got the bolt started. I made sure it was lined up in the back, and then we can just tap it all the way through, make sure obviously it came out the other side. So now we're good. And now we can get the upper bolt right here. You can just get that started by hand. Make sure it goes in nice and easy, as you can see. Alright, hopefully you can see with the angle that we're perfectly lined up back there. I can't quite see through the viewfinder, but I think you can see that it's lined up. And while we're right here, we'll just spin this nut on. Alright, now for our final torque, what we need to do is put the jack back under there. We want to raise the whole vehicle up till it just starts to come off the jack stand there, and then we will know that the whole suspension is loaded. I'm going to do that, but we're going to do a slight variation. What we're going to do is I'm just going to put the jack under there and just take a little bit of slack off, and then we're going to snug that bolt up right there, that pinch bolt, because on the aftermarket design we don't have a ring all the way around. We only have a tiny little bit of a ledge in the back right here where that notch is, and the rest of it is smooth. And so if this fork is spread apart too much, and I've seen it on this design, when we put pressure from the jack and lift it up, this thing can go right over it, and we don't want that to happen. So that's a slight variation I do in these models. And you can see what I'm talking about on the factory one. You see how we have this ring all the way around, so you're not going to push that up and over. But on the aftermarket ones, this little ledge is only about this much, so we got to be careful. We don't want to push the fork up over it. Alright, so I just took up the slack, and then, can I get a shot? You can see we're lined up back there, but you can see how much of a bracket we have. We don't have much. So we'll go ahead and snug that bolt up right now. And now that we snugged it up, can you see we're right where we're supposed to be? We're looking perfect back there. Alright, now that we did that, now we can raise the suspension all the way up. Alright, now we got the suspension loaded with the jack. Now we can tack down our bolt and nut down here. So what I'll do is I'll just hold on to it with a wrench on this side, and I'll just tack it down with my impact on the other side. Right, as you can see, we got the nut all tightened up. Now the reason we put the jack on here and put this under load when we tighten this is, you see that bushing right there? We want to tighten this nut and bolt up when this suspension is going to be where it lives most of its life, so at its ride height. And the reason we do that is so it doesn't twist up the bushing. If we tighten it when it's down, we may twist it or tighten it in one position, and then when this vehicle gets put under load like this, it could torque and twist, and then it's going to live its life in the wrong position, and then these things prematurely fail. So we don't want to do that. Alright, while it's still under load, now we can tighten these up. You can see that they're pushed all the way through, so we can just tighten them up pretty easy by hand. And of course, KYB didn't get the memo. We got to switch over to a 13 on this and a 15 for these, and that pains me because 13s and 15s don't belong on Hondas. Alright, now with it under load, we can snug these up. Alright, now we'll torque these down to 37, and if you noticed, I already pretty much did the final torque on these. These are only 16, but if you go to 16, they'll usually be a little loose, and it won't snug these up tight enough, because you can see the metal's kind of pinched. You want to cinch that up and make sure that it's secure, because you don't want these things backing out, and you want your strut brace to be nice and tight. So usually I go more than 16 on these, but we'll take these to 37 like we're supposed to. Grab this before we forget it. Alright, now just to double check, we'll make sure that these are at least to 16. Now I'm confident that they're more than 16, but we'll just make sure. Yeah, it's at least 16. So we're good. Alright, now we'll torque down our pinch bolt. That's going to be 32. We're probably pretty close where I tacked it down, but we'll see. That wasn't as tight as I thought. I thought I hammered it down a little too much with the impact. Alright, now we just got to torque that lower fork bolt to 47 foot-pounds. Because my jack is kind of in the way, instead of a wrench, I'm going to use my ratchet. Just put that over here, and we'll torque this to 47. Boom. Alright, now that we got everything torqued down, now we can remove our jack. Alright, before we forget, let's reattach our brake line. You want to make sure that this piece goes through. They can easily get cockeyed on there. Alright, now we can look over our work real quick. You can see there's the final strut in there. And we made sure to torque this. We got our lower nut and bolt torqued. And like I said, I'll be replacing that as soon as I do that compliance bushing. We got our brake line reattached. And we got all 5 of these torqued down, so we're good to go. Well, there you go. Hope you enjoyed how I do the struts on these 7th generation Accords. I recommend getting an alignment. Maybe after a few days, let these springs settle in, let them compress a little bit and get where they're going to ride. Then get an alignment. I always recommend getting an alignment anytime you do struts or suspension work like that. I got more suspension work to do on this, and then once it's all done, then this thing's going to get in alignment. But hey, as always, if you enjoyed the video, it helped you out, make sure to give it a thumbs up. Thanks for watching.